Good afternoon. On this glorious afternoon in May, here we are stuck at the RD building. But luckily, we're getting together to discuss the Comox Valley Water Committee. So I call this meeting to order for Tuesday, May 9th. Just a little bit of housekeeping items here, of course, for the throngs in our gallery today. We have emergency exits to the left and emergency exits to the right where you came in. If there is a need to exit the building, we muster in the parking lot. And just so everybody knows, the washrooms are down the hall and to your right. And please leave plenty of time because it takes 15 minutes to get in and out of them. Okay, so we're going to start off right off the bat with recognition of our traditional territories. And we're very proud to say we're doing our business today on the traditional unceded territory of our Comox First Nation people. Delegations, we don't have any delegations today. We have the resolution status report for receipt. Move to second on receipt. Any discussion? Director Wells.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wondered on item number 1. It says it was created February 14th, but the other items have actions and delegations, and they've been delegated. And I just wondered if there's an update on this particular item or if it's still waiting to be actioned.
Over to Acting CEO James Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I will ask Chris LaRose, our Senior Manager of Water and Wastewater Services, if Chris, you have any update on the item, and if not, we will be certain to update this resolutions report for the next Water Committee meeting.
Over to Chris.
Thanks to the CEO and the Chair. Yeah, so the first part of the motion is being actioned. So we are in communication with the Village of Cumberland staff to advocate on behalf of the watershed and with regards to the Bevan Industrial Lands development. And we have met with the village recently to go over the results of that GHD report. The second part, to be honest, I'm not sure exactly the status of that, but we can, as the CEO mentioned, we can make sure that there's a note on this item the next time around.
Thanks very much.
Okie dokie. Any further questions on the status or the resolution status? Seeing none, call a question on receipt. All those in favor? And that carries. Reports. Comox Valley Water Management Advisory Committee. Minutes from the meeting for receipt.
Second.
Moving second on the minutes. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, we'll call the question on receipt. All in favor? And that carries. Number 2, Water Service South Extension Project Roadmap for receipt. Moving second on receipt. Over to CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to introduce Zoe Berkey, Senior Engineering Analyst, who will walk us through the staff report and I believe has a PowerPoint to share as well. Over to you, Zoe.
Thank you, James. Through the CEO and the chair. This presentation is just meant to help walk through the report and provide a bit of an update and a refresher on the Water South Extension project and where we plan to go. If you have any questions, please feel free to stop me throughout. There's just a couple slides.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Any questions?
We just have slight technical difficulty.
Oh, here we go.
We're not.
We're trying to get the
Just trying to change slides.
slides up.
You can see them, but I can't change them. There we go. Okay.
Good.
So as a bit of background, in 2018, we signed the mutual benefit agreement with Comox First Nation for the water treatment project. And this agreement was a critical milestone for the water treatment project and was key to receiving the grant funding and the water licenses. Included within the MBA was the provision for water servicing to the Comox lands in the south. Following the MBA, we have been working in scoping that project. So the original project included both the Comox First Nation and the Royston Water Local Service Area. And through 2019, 2019 and 2021, we looked for additional project partners, and that's where we saw the opportunity to also include the city of Courtenay with the route. So in 2022 and 2023, we completed the preliminary design for the Water South Extension project, and the proposed project partners include now the Comox First Nation, the city of Courtenay, and the Royston Water Local Service Area. So the route includes 11.4 kilometers of water main, and the costs of the project are portioned through the 3 project partners. So no cost will be borne by the Comox Valley water system. The project originates up here. Oops. Originates at the start of the red line and will end with servicing the Comox First Nation development lands in the south. In addition, the green section of line is an extension for the Royston Water Local Service Area, as water for Royston is currently serviced from the north and the village of Cumberland, and that the new line will require a pump station for Royston to get the water to the top and service the service area. In addition, there will be 3 PRV and meters for the connections to supply bulk water to the city of Courtenay and the Comox First Nation. So the total project costs are about 20 million, and the project received 7.4 million in grant funding. These costs, as I mentioned previously, are apportioned between the 3 project partners, and we've been working with both Comox and the city of Courtenay on the apportionment. So the apportionment is based on flows, and you can see on the bottom there, the total costs after the grant are apportioned to Comox, Royston, and the city. In addition, both the Royston Water Local Service Area and Comox will be required to pay the Comox Valley Water System capital improvement cost charges. So next steps for the project. Critical to the project proceeding is the Comox support of the project through the ratification of treaty. In the interim, we plan to continue working with the city of Courtenay on the agreement of the cost allocation and the project scope, along with progressing our works with Royston. This includes determining the cost per connection. So moving forward into the fall and the winter, we'll be looking to complete agreements with the city of Courtenay, the Comox First Nation following treaty, and Royston. For Royston, there will be no alternate approval process required because there is no debt required for this project. So it will only require director consent and inspector of municipality approval. The grant funding for this project is set to expire in 2026. So our proposed approach is June, fall of this year, work on those project agreements. Once we have those project agreements in 2024, complete the detailed design and procurement, project construction in 2025, completed for March of 2026. The project honors the commitments the CVRD made in the MBA in supplying water to the south. At this time, to help progress the discussion specifically with residents in Royston, we have 2 requests of the committee. The first is that the Water Committee approve the Royston Water Local Service Area in obtaining water from the Comox Valley water system. And the second is that Royston be allowed to repay the CICCs over a 10-year period with interest to reduce the upfront capital cost burden to residents. Happy to answer any questions you may have on this report.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Alternate Director Minions. Oh, there you go. You're on.
It's been a while since I've been in the room, so thanks for the help with the microphones. Just curious, once the capital and infrastructure is in, what is the volume or capacity of households that the new line would be able to support? And I'm sure that's something most people might know, but.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the system or the line will provide fire flow kind of protection for the city of Courtenay. So it's sized to provide that peak hourly demand at those 2 connection points for the city, along with providing the full Royston Water Local Service Area with water, which is about 2,000 connections, or a peak hourly demand of about 3,000 cubic meters a day. And then it will also supply the first phase of the Comox build out. So not the entire build outs of the Comox Southlands, but that kind of first phase of growth in Lot 3. And then as the development lands in the south grow, we'll have to further kind of decide on how to grow the water system and provide additional servicing.
We have Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. It's a good project, and maybe it might be interested based on that as a follow-up question what the size of the pipe might be. And we've changed alignment on this project. Well, we had a draft concept, I guess, not really an alignment. And I guess just for the board to know, like for area and for the public for area, I think it will leave some of the houses up around Kenwood. Is that it? I think we won't bring water up there, so we would probably need to maintain some kind of agreement with Cumberland to service those homes.
Yeah, that's a great point. I forgot to mention, so there is a small section of Royston kind of outlined in that light purple. It's a little hard to see on the map. And we call that the Kentwood zone. So the Kentwood zone is a direct feed from the village of Cumberland. So the rest of Royston, all the water goes into the reservoir and they're fed through the reservoir. But this section, for the pressure to supply water to those homes, it's a direct feed off the village. So if we wanted to add them to the Comox Valley water system in the same way as the rest of Royston, we'd have to add an additional second pump station at the Royston Reservoir site to get the pressure needed to supply those homes. So we're working with the village and seeing if there's an opportunity to keep those homes on the village of Cumberland feed for the interim, so that we don't have to build that pump station now, just as a bit of a cost-saving measure. Our agreement with the village is that we look for an alternate source for Royston. We're looking at about 200 homes here, and the total service is about 900 connections. So trying to kind of strike a balance between upfront capital cost.
Thanks. And just as a follow-up, yeah, I would be quite amenable to creating a little service area just for those few homes that rather than spend a lot of capital on trying to push water uphill. So hopefully that's fruitful with Cumberland. And second, does this project have any impact on the residents of Area C and Area A along? Because I see along Arden Road, because I think they're all serviced by water currently, but just for you to confirm that, because I haven't considered that before.
They will not be serviced. So this will be a transmission main. So it'll only supply water in bulk to those PRV and meter connections, but it won't be providing like residential connections off of this main. It'll just be transmission.
It'll just flow through. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you very much. And Director Morin.
Thank you, Chair. Mainly a comment. I mean, we read these reports and we have different sections of the reports that it's easy to kind of gloss over, but I just wanted to mention the piece around intergovernmental factors, because it's quite a long paragraph. I'm just going to read a quick part of it. The CVRD recognizes there's nothing more sacred to the Comox people than water. Access to water is critical for the exercise of traditional rights and necessary for the physical, cultural, and spiritual survival of the Comox. And I just think that, and the paragraph goes on to talk about constitutional rights. And we know that across the nation, we have many Indigenous communities that don't have access to clean drinking water. So as much as we focus on often the infrastructure and that piece of it, I think I really love how in our report that we flesh out some of this that speaks to some of the reconciliation work that we're trying to do, and to recognize that there's more to some of these projects than just the infrastructure, the hard infrastructure, but there's pieces that help us walk the talk in other ways. So I just wanted to make mention of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very thoughtful. Is there any new speakers? I think the lights are still on. Oh, you shut it off. Did you
I
want to
was
speak?
just going to do a follow-up.
Okay. Director Arbor?
Yeah, just to remind ourselves to following up in Dr. Morin's comments that this project, its inception goes all the way back to prior to the building of the water treatment plant, and that without the support of the Comox First Nation, I'm not sure how well the project would have been as well received. And part of it was the water license for the south area of Comox First Nation. So now the task is to actually put the infrastructure to turn it from just a conceptual water license to an actual water flow. Thanks for bringing that up, Dr. Morin.
So So we are on receipt. I see no further lights. Director Hardy, do you have anything to ask? You're fine. Okay. So on receipt, call the question. All those in favor, say aye. That's good. Thank you. That brings us to recommendation number 1. If somebody will move it. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on their recommendation? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries. Recommendation number 2. Moved and seconded on 2. Any discussion on 2? Seeing none, we'll call the question on that. All in favor? That carries. So the folks in Royston will soon be sipping the champagne of the most modern, technically available potable water on the planet. So it doesn't get better than that, folks. Now we get into the Water Conservation Bylaw Amendment, a report May 5th for receipt. Moving second on receipt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Crystal Rose, our Senior Manager of Water and Wastewater Services, will introduce this staff report and field any questions. Chris.
Thank you, James, and through the chair. Good afternoon, everyone. The report on the agenda provides or proposes some high-level changes to the water conservation bylaw. So every year, as we get into this time of the year, and we start walking our way through the water restrictions, we receive a lot of feedback from residents who have some suggestions on ways to improve the bylaw, and we take those under advisement. We keep track of them, and every year or two we do bring forward some proposed amendments to the bylaw to help increase the effectiveness, increase compliance, and reduce confusion by the residents. So there's 3 on the report today. The first one is a recommendation to shift to stage 2 automatically on July 1st. So currently, and just recently, we did shift to stage 1 automatically on May 1st. So that's embedded within the bylaw. But right now, as the bylaw is worded, we work our way through the stage 2, 3, and 4. Not that we've on the basis of flows down the Pumped River. Some of the feedback we've received consistently over the years from the public is that the uncertainty of the shift, because every year, almost every year, we do make that shift to stage 2, and the uncertainty over the timing is confusing and does lead to some non-compliances because people go away on vacation, we make a shift to stage 2, and they don't have the ability or opportunity to update their controllers. So July 1st is approximately that average point at which we do make that shift on an annual basis. So the proposal here is to do that automatically. The second one, and this is really just to address a bit of a typo, is to make it consistent. So under stage 2, increase from 45 to 49 days for when people have a permit for watering new grass, seed, or sod. And then the third is that under stage 3, to allow the watering of trees, shrubs, flowers, and vegetables by micro irrigation, drip irrigation, or handheld container to occur at any time of any day. And that's consistent with the language under stage 2. We believe, so this is feedback we received typically from those a little bit more elderly who, because stage 3 is often towards the end of the season, at the driest time of the year, the days have started to get shorter. Those watering times that they're currently restricted to typically fall within the dark. And there's a bit of a safety issue of being outside at that time of the day. So we think we can, this is a concession that we can make without sacrificing much, if any, water consumption, and it could provide a bit of an incentive for people to switch to those lower intensity type methods of watering. So those are the 3 pieces that we're recommending be amended today. I'm happy to answer any questions about this direction.
Thank you very much, Chris. And Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. And it's good to see the feedback from the community and some of the adjustments proposed. Just remember when a number of years ago, I was doing my master with somebody who was looking after water and use in Kelowna, and they had started programs, education programs around types of grasses that require less water and all those kinds of thins. Like, it makes sense for the Okanagan to be a leader in the province around that, but I'm just curious, when the report says that obviously we use 3 times more water in the summer when in the driest conditions, like are there education programs in the valley either through the municipalities? Because even for, as I looked at to maybe on board Royston or for other water systems, I'm not aware of an education program on how to really encourage people to change practices a little bit.
No, it's a good point. We have some educational material on our website that we do on an annual basis. We do some communication campaign to educate people on the importance of water conservation. And each of the municipalities also have some material of their own, but we don't have a compendium of educational material. So it's something that we could definitely look at. We did recently roll out a new water conservation rebate. So that's one avenue that we have to help encourage people to conserve. So we had a longstanding smart controller rebate in place, and we just implemented this year a rebate for topsoil and mulch, which has been very popular. So that increases the depth of that cover and the absorption capacity of the ground. So the rebates is definitely one of our tools for spreading the word and getting that knowledge out there. But we'll give some thought to what more we could do to educate people about the importance and what other tools are out there.
Thank you, Director Wells.
There we go. Thank you, Chair. My wife actually noticed that topsoil and bark mulch. So for Mother's Day, she got 25 yards of bark mulch, which arrived last night. So I'm a little tired today. We only moved about half of it, but I think the uptick is probably going to be pretty high for that for sure. And great to see how, again, that's going to have a very positive effect and really helped me convince her that getting rid of our lawn and going full bark mulch was a good thing. So I was just going to comment, the city of Courtenay, in the past, we have had an ambassador program where people do go around and they sort of target houses with extra green lawns, so to speak, and let them know, especially if they can actually see that they're watering at wrong times or too much, that kind of thing, to really explain how they can do the water. So it's fairly targeted. But the reason why I actually pushed my button in the first place was stage 4 water restrictions isn't contemplated in this here. And I just wondered, I know it was something that was brought up many years ago, and I don't think it's necessarily been implemented, but I know in the last couple of years in the summer when it gets super dry that's possibly something. I just wondered if that's something that needs to be part of this messaging or a refresher for those that aren't aware of what the stage 4 water restrictions are.
Sure. Yeah. So the stage 4 is the most recent addition to the water conservation bylaw. So currently we did implement it. We have implemented it once during the emergency repair. So it is typically considered an emergency stage. So about 2 years ago when we had the big repair, it was just around now actually. So we did implement it to help ensure people used as little water as possible, reduce our operational risk. Other than that, we do have the obligation under our water license with BC Hydro, and this is embedded in the bylaw, to move to stage 4 if we go down below, if BC Hydro is forced to reduce flows to below 5.7 cubic meters per second down the river, which we came fairly close to towards the end of last year. That record-breaking dry fall, I think they got down to around 7 cubic meters per second. So certainly the prospect was there. This report really is just bringing forward some recommended amendments to the bylaw. We haven't mentioned stage 4 because it's at this point it's hopefully a distant possibility, but we're open to suggestions.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
Director Moore.
Great, thank you, Chair. Lots of good, I think, ideas going around the table around other measures for conservation. I'd love to see the educational component bolstered a bit in terms of even talking about things like alternatives to grass and lawns and promoting drought resistant plants and stuff like that. I also have heard from some of the folks from the conservation groups lately around, although we have lots of drinking water, of course, when those get really low, the salmon are really suffering. And I think people see that we've got lots of water, but they don't see some of the other impacts from conservation. And I might, after the discussion, propose an additional recommendation around some water conservation incentives, but I'll let people continue to chat and move on with the rest of this report and the recommendations and see where we're at after that. Thank you.
Yes, what is old is new again. I can recall when we first brought up that dangerous concept of water meters. It was kind of an anathema to the elected officials because it was a surefire way to get this elected. But Comox Rec actually put on a, back in the day of Al Fraser, they put on a thing at the rec center, and Al was talking about drought resistant shrubs and a certain mixture of grasses that use about 1/3 less water. So I know all this stuff has been researched before. And one of the other things too, that was really popular up to about 10 years ago is those little cups you could put out on the lawn, and it would show you how much water you actually put on. And when you hit that mark, you turned it off, you know. But I think the original low-tech hillbilly version, the original low-tech version of it was a salmon tin. And when the salmon tin was full, that was it. So yeah, we're going to have to do something about our summertime usage as the years go by, but at least we're heading in the right direction. So any more discussion on that one? I see nothing. So let's call it on receipt. All in favor of receipt? That carries, and we have a recommendation. Okay, you have to flip a coin here, I think. Okay, so on the recommendation, any further discussion on that? Seeing none, let's call the question on the recommendation. All those in favor? Any opposed? That absolutely carries. So no new business? Oh, so sorry, Director Moore.
That's okay. So I did wonder if the committee would entertain having staff explore and report back on some options around water conservation incentives, such as rebates for cisterns and other collection measures. I don't know if that's something that I know that other communities are doing that, and I think it would be great to just investigate maybe how that's working in other communities and see if those options might be. It's not necessarily making a decision on it, but just coming back with a report. Okay, thank you. I can pass on the wording if you like.
Yeah, it never hurts to keep the publicity up at this level, because people tend to forget. I know we had a water fair years ago that was really well attended at the Florence Philberg, and I think people want to do the right thing, so just a little nudge here and there make a big difference.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say a couple other things. Just that people are collecting water, and I think more people would do it if there was a little bit of help, some education around that, and also to not use treated water for watering plants and things like that. So I think it could help shift some behavior possibly. So that's sort of the rationale behind it. Thank you.
Well, we have the motion on the screen, and speaking to the motion, Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. I'm definitely in favor of that. And I would also note there might be a link there. We have the similar staff anyways. We're in the next few months at the ESC, we're going to get a report on the potential for watershed stewardship service. And so, and I know that we've looked as part of that work at services that exist elsewhere, for example, the RDN. And when you brought up the cistern and things like that, that's something that, so I think this your motion actually is meant for this committee, but I think there might be actually greater linkages with the rest of the regional district as well as in if that gets explored. So yeah, I'm in favor.
And Director Wilco-Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. I just want to thank Director Morton for bringing this forward. It's always a kind of a carrots and sticks kind of situation. I think wherever possible, you want to take a look at all the possible carrots, and glad the staff will have a chance to do that and report back. So thanks for bringing this forward.
And sorry,
Mr. Chair.
you count? Okay.
Just, I see Chris has put a slide on. He might want to add a little bit here. Certainly staff can undertake this work and report back to the water committee. Looking at what other options are out there. I know staff does take a look at rebate programs and other incentives from time to time. More than likely, there's probably a financial component to this, which would of course have to be something that's considered in the budget. And so I don't want to create an expectation. This would be something to come back for this year's irrigation season or conservation season, if you will, but certainly there's work that can be done. Krista, do you want to add anything or ask any clarity in terms of what this work might look like?
Yeah, thanks, James. I wanted to flag the cost implication, but also maybe just we'll highlight that we did in the past have a incentive or a rebate for water storage. I think that started in around 2010 and lasted 2 or 3 years. There was limited uptake on it. And also, I think at the time it was felt that there was limited return for the investment by the service, just given the volumes that are involved. If you look at I think when I'm fully in favor of staff coming back with a report about all the various incentives and rebates that could be offered and explored. And I think that's a great initiative. And so when we're assessing those and ranking them, we look at one of the key criteria is how much water potentially could be diverted or saved as a result of the initiative. And while collecting rainwater it has some pluses, the volumes are pretty limited just given the cost of building storage, right? So when you look at the two that we have in place, so smart irrigation controllers, the topsoil and mulch, they have the potential to save some very significant volumes for each property. Whereas the cost, the saving potential for a rain barrel or a tank is really just, you can fill it up once, basically, in the type of season that we have here, the weather, and then it is quickly depleted and it's not filled up during that season again. It waits to the next winter and gets filled up. So the saving potential is limited to the volume of that tank, whereas some of these other rebates have the potential to save that much water on a weekly basis, potentially even every time the irrigation controller comes on. So I love the idea of coming back with a report exploring generally the types of incentives that we could consider, along with effectiveness, the cost implications to the service.
Okay, Director Morton again.
Thanks for that. I think it is worth revisiting because that would have been quite a long time ago. I also hear from a lot of through the Food Policy Council and other connections in that regard around growing food, that it is something that some people say to me that they virtually don't use any treated water for their garden because they have such a good collection system. So I think, it's worth taking a look at, and maybe it won't have the kind of results that we're hoping for, but maybe through the exploration, we may see some best practice in some other areas. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Director Wells.
I'm back. Thank you, Chair. And I was thinking about mentioning I'm back again because when we did talk about this quite a few years ago, and part of the conversation was also purple pipe system. And again, I think 7 or 8 years ago, there were some municipalities that were looking at that as a possibility as well. And I didn't know if that's something that is even really contemplated anymore, if that was so it's kind of a pipe dream, I guess.
Purple pipes, purple pipes.
The concept came up during the liquid waste management planning process because purple pipes distribute non-potable water, right? And so yeah, the concept came up in terms of being able to treat to a reclaimed water status and or level, and then distribute that wastewater, the treated effluent. It was just given the kind of remote nature of the treatment plant. It was something that we flagged for, potentially in the future, but not at this point. So it is a very capital intensive proposal to install parallel pipes. It's something that would be excellent to consider in community planning for new communities, because you have that opportunity to consider making that much lower investment when you're already working within the streets. But at this point, we did decide through the LWMP process to defer that consideration until potentially we have a higher level of density in the future.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Yep.
And Director Harbour.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't expect that topic to come up, but for Director Wells, we actually now have somewhat of a pilot project in the south around purple pipes. Union Bay Estates has put in the infrastructure for purple pipes. It's still, the regulatory environment is still really tough, I think, in British Columbia and Canada. So there's a lot of unanswered questions, but to their merit, they did put it in. So it's in the ground. So as a valley, we can probably learn from how that system evolves and see if we can get some lessons from that.
Well, I don't know about the municipalities, but I know that part of our building code stipulates we have to have a rainwater management plan. And I see an awful lot of cisterns going in as part of that plan, rather than just running it into a gravel basin or something. I see those big black systems that you can see down across the bridge here, and very large cisterns that people are putting into new homes. So it's not lost. Anything else to add? Okay. So we're on the recommendation to bring forward a report, and I'm going to call a question on that. So anybody opposed? Gotcha. Then it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Second. On termination, all those in favor? We are terminated. Thank you.